Thank you everyone for joining us. We've given a couple of minutes for everyone to get ready and get started, but I think we can now start. So let me thank you for being here for our webinar, The Silent Revolution of Zero-Emission Construction Machinery, the database and the report launch. So you will hear today from the speakers that you see listed on the screen. First of all, Danko, Aleksic from Eurocities and Big Buyers working together. That will follow by Linda, my colleague, who will present the database. Then Ella will guide us through the PURE project, the Oslo climate journey, and I will dive deeper into this with the report. And my colleague Mark will finish up with some concluding remarks. So without further ado, let's see if maybe Danko, you can share your screen and we can get started.
Yes, thanks a lot, Irene. Just give me a second. You have to stop sharing before I start sharing. Notification says.
Yes, let me try over here.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Thanks a lot for introduction, Irene. So, dear participants, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Big Buyers Working Together project team, I wish you the warmest welcome to today's webinar. My name is Danko Aleksic. I work for Eurocities and I'm a project coordinator of Big Buyers Working Together project. So we will begin with this webinar with a rather short intro about the Big Buyers Working Together project for those of you who may not be familiar with it. What is Big Buyers Working Together? So it's a project, it's a collaboration between public buyers with strong purchasing power to promote wider use of strategic public procurement for innovative and sustainable solutions to their procurement challenges. The project was launched in March 2023 and it is funded by the EU through ASMEA. And it's managed by a consortium composed of 3 members, so Eurocities, ICLE Europe, and BME. So this is third iteration of Big Buyers Working Together initiative. Previously, there were 2 related contracts with DG GROW, so Big Buyers Initiative and Big Buyers for Climate and Environment. In the second iteration of the project, so Big Buyers for Climate and Environment, there were 4 working groups. Here you can see them in right side of the screen. And in the third iteration, we are much more ambitious. So we do not have 4, but 10 working groups. We call them communities of practices. Our approach. So we started with the needs assessment. The needs assessment was undertaken during 2023, so more particularly during the summer 2023. And as a result of the needs assessment, we established and defined 10 communities of practices. All 10 are embedded on the public buyers community platform. What is important to stress is that we do not have a one-size-fits-all approach to our work with communities of practices. Each community of practice defines its own objectives and collaboration activities to effectively address sector-specific opportunities and challenges. Participation in the community of practice is, of course, free, and costs of travel and accommodation related to participation in various physical events are covered by the project. Who should join to our communities of practices? So participation is open for public purchasing organizations such as local and regional governments, central purchasing bodies, and other public agencies. Another market actors like producers and suppliers, industry associations, etc., will be invited to join various sessions and events, of course, depending on the focus and needs of each and every community of practice. I mentioned that as a result of the needs assessment, we have established 10 communities of practices. Here I listed all 10 of them for your information. So COPs, zero-emission construction sites, circular construction, sustainability in ICT, and zero-emission buses and services are coordinated by Eurocities. COPs, sustainable solar panels, social procurement, heavy-duty electric vehicles, and New European Bauhaus are coordinated by ICLEI, while COPs related to healthcare sector, efficiency in healthcare, and sustainability in healthcare are coordinated by BME. Here on the right, you can see some photos from our physical activities, so study visits and hackathons, which have been recently organized in Oslo. Speaking about zero-emission construction sites, COP, here, so I provided the list of members of the COP for your information. As you can see, at the moment, we have 11 members of our COP, and the COP is led by city of Oslo. As I mentioned, so each COP has developed community roadmap. Community roadmap defines vision of the community, mission of the community. Community roadmap defines the list of deliverables and also provides the proper timeline for deliver. Speaking about vision of our community of practice zero-emission construction sites, the community sees Europe where zero-emission construction sites are the standard, supported by harmonized and collaborative procurement practices to encourage market innovation and reduce the environmental impact of construction activities, contributing to a sustainable future. As I have already mentioned, our community roadmap defines lists deliverables, and here you can see 3 deliverables envisaged for 2025. First of them is preliminary market availability analysis, update of the database on emission-free construction sites, and this is exactly the topic of today's webinar. Importance of this updated database. So to proceed with market engagement with national and international suppliers, it is necessary to have an updated list of the electric machinery available at the market. Therefore, the COP members recognize the importance of the database as a critical tool for transition towards more sustainable and climate-friendly construction practices, and partnered with Bellona in updating it. The work has been based on the database of the emission-free construction equipment developed by Bellona Foundation and available since July 2022. Today, our team will introduce the updated version of the database, will demonstrate how to navigate it, and will highlight the main improvements compared to its previous version. And it's important to say that the database will be available to the public. So that would be a short introduction from my side. If you would like to get more information about the project, or if you would like to join our community of practice, please feel free to contact us via following emails. And I hope that this webinar will be inspiring for you, and I also hope that you will be using our database regularly in period to come. So that would be it from my side, and Irene, the floor goes back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danko, for such an insightful presentation and giving everyone an overview of what we're here for, and laying the ground very well for Linda to present the database. Over to you, Linda.
There we go. So, just a moment. All right. Here we are. So, I would like to first give you a little introduction on the history of Bellona when it comes to this database and zero-emission construction sites. Everything starts in 2016 when Bellona partnered with the city of Oslo on defining a strategy for public procurement for implementing fossil-free construction sites. However, throughout that year, the goal became somewhat more ambitious, and the discussion shifted towards zero-emission or emission-free construction sites under the motto, what can be run electric shall be run electric. Between 2016 and 2018, the city of Oslo engaged in several market dialogues to which Bellona has participated and was informed. And these market dialogues eventually informed our first zero-emission construction site market maturity report. But as the situation showed that it was being developed, the market development was moving swiftly, the following year we came with a second market maturity report. Although we were seeing interest, we were also experiencing some sort of objection, especially in the European Union arena. And the key position of our contractors was zero-emission construction machinery does not exist, is not developed. We cannot do this work. So we decided to prove them wrong, and we published the first version of the emission-free construction equipment database. So what happened since then? Well, we've seen a growing interest coming from policymakers, industry, and researchers that were using our database for tracking markets development, and competitors. Policymakers were using it to inform procurement strategies, and researchers to do market research. We also seen that there was a wide geographical diffusion primarily across Europe and California and New York in the US. We've also received continuous input, meaning that we've received updates on existing products, technical questions, but also product suggestions. But more and more, we've received the following question: when will you update this database? And this brings us to today. But before introducing you to our database, we want to show, to highlight the key role that was played by the big buyers working together. Indeed, throughout this partnership, we've managed to establish a network. This was enabled by the context we've created with the partners of the community, but also to the events that we've participated. And today, these contexts are integral part of Bellona's climate action. The partners of the big buyers communities also contributed to the database by providing us inputs, feedbacks, especially on how to make our database more transparent and user-friendly. And they flagged many times when some products were missing. This eventually allowed us to land with this new expanded and updated version of the database. So let's go to the database now. There's a short video showing you how to access it.
Linda, unfortunately, we cannot hear the video. If you want to maybe explain a little bit with your voice. Maybe check the volume bar.
Sorry, can you hear?
No, we cannot hear the video. unfortunately.
Ah, that's really, oh no. Okay. No, that's really unfortunate. So, okay, I will dive you through it. I will talk on top of it. Sorry for
No
that.
problem. That sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, that's a bit odd because I can kind of hear it, but yeah, I'll take off my headphones. All right. Okay. So, well, first you look for Bellona on the web, and this will bring you to Bellona's European homepage. Now you head up all the way to focus area and then down to embodied carbon. In the focus area of embodied carbon, you will find related focus areas. And here it is, zero emission construction sites. So this is a new edition at Bellona. Here you will find grouped all of our publication insights, everything we've produced on zero emission construction sites so far. But when it comes to the database, you should go there. And here you have two options. You either download the database, now this opens to a live Excel file. From here, you can either save it locally or you can dive through it on the web. You will see now that we've organized the information according to manufacturers, products, and also inserted some key specs. And for all products, you will find a link that brings you to the manufacturer's web page. So if you move to the README sheet, you will see that you will find some contact info to indeed contact us, either with inquiries, feedbacks, but also if you want to give suggestions on products, for instance. Alternatively, you can download the database, add the products yourself, and then send us these sort of updated version of the database. It might be a bit faster than how it was, but
Thank you, Linda. I think that went really well.
okay. Option 2, you'll go to we've developed the emission-free construction equipment database there, and this will bring you to the online version of our database. This is the version that is organized by product type. So if, for instance, you open cement track mixer, you will find manufacturers, serial numbers, and all key specs. But the offline version is more comprehensive. So if you then click there, you will go to the database, but organized by manufacturer. Again, you open, you go on one of the manufacturers, and you will see some key information about the products that they have available. One key point here is that we have not yet updated the online versions of the database. This is a work in progress. It will come soon. So if you want to make reference to a more updated version, you should go to the offline version of the database. And here I am. Sorry, that was, oops. So let's go here.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, I'll go just a second. I'm sorry about that, but it happens. So just yes. Okay, here we are. So what's new in this database? Well, first I want to let you know how we approached the topic, the update. We contacted over 60 manufacturers. Also, by going at Bauma, we had the opportunity to witness ourselves how many new products were in the market at that point. And this was shown on our addition of over 170 new products. Of these new products, 22 are entirely new product category, in addition to the expansion of already existing product categories. And this shows that there is not only a growth in the number of products in the market, but on differentiation among the manufacturers, which was also a key concern when it came to our contact with procurers. And finally, we've decided to also introduce the frequently asked questions section. This is intended to be an auxiliary tool in support of decision makers. Primarily, it outlines what is this product, what is its use, and what are its uses beyond the traditional construction sector. Okay, yes. So one key point is that in this process, we entered in contact with industry, and we also tried to understand what were the key developments, what were the challenges still in place, and how they've seen these challenges being overcome by makers. What we've heard is that Europe is falling behind when it comes to zero-emission construction machinery. The industry is warning that this market segment is experiencing something very much similar to what happened in the automotive sector. We've also seen that when we went to Bauma 2025, the presence of a large share of Asian manufacturers was not negligible. And so we're wondering, okay, what is the issue? The issue is not the technology. The technology exists, is expanding. This database is proving it, but the issue is scale. So we need to scale up production to bring down its costs. And those industrial players that are actively engaging in zero-emission construction machinery are telling us that they need a strong demand signal and a clear pathway on how European regulation will evolve. So one thing that apparently all interested manufacturers agree on is that green public procurement is the key enabler. In this sector specifically, it has the capacity to shift market dynamics in quite a strong way. And this brings us to local public authorities. We should move towards making zero-emission construction sites the norm. This is to send a strong signal to producers, but also from a responsibility standpoint, cities should be actively engaged in cutting emissions in their cities, in improving the quality of their residents and workers by reducing noise pollution as well as air pollution. And to be honest, at this point, ultimately, you are the initiators of what we've been calling the silent revolution. So, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Now we're opening the floor for questions on the database and maybe on Danko's presentation as well, before we continue with the rest of the presentations. So Marit is asking in the chat, maybe Linda, we can take this one.
Yes.
Already live. She wonders if there is any information on the geographical spread of the availability of the machinery, and what does it mean that the machinery is listed as available? Is it commercially available, or does that also mean prototypes?
There are both prototypes, but the machinery that we've listed here is available in the market. So Ideally, you can either rent it or purchase it. When it comes to geographical diffusion, I want to understand whether you mean the cities or like regions that have been more actively engaged with the zero-emission construction sites, or do you mean the location of producers, of manufacturers, if I may?
Well, we wait for Mary to chip in. Well, but I do think she means geographical spread of manufacturers in terms of the products. Yes, in countries. So she means availabilities in countries of machines.
They are widely available in Europe. They are widely available in the US. Sometimes the availability does not match between the two regions. And indeed, we do have a section in the database that outlines where these products are primarily available. So should I specify the scope? Could you specify the scope of the database? Well, the scope of the database is primarily to inform public procurers on the availability of this machinery, as well as contractors. We have not included trucks. We're primarily listing zero-emission construction machinery and equipment.
But I do think that we do have some cabins that transport heavy machinery listed there as well. So thanks, Bert. Joe Driffield asks if the focus of the database is only on electric plant, or does it include hydrogen?
It includes hydrogen, but I have to say that electric machinery is quite a large majority of the products listed in the database.
Great. We also have a couple more questions in the chat. The Excel file download seems to be from 2022 and it's not reflecting the online version. We're also experiencing actually that issue earlier in the day, but it should, if you refresh the cookies, it should actually show the latest version. We have been testing it a while, but yeah, it takes a while to load. But as of, if you give it a bit of time, it should link correctly. And we have a couple more questions here in the Q&A section, and we see it might be worth mentioning that some of the machines are not available, as when you ask the manufacturer, they cannot deliver before maybe 1 or 2 years in your country. Yes, that is actually a good point. We are actually not aware of this situation happening, but if that is the case, we really ask anyone that uses the database to flag that so we can also reflect it as well. Pedro mentions, thank you for this. Now, we mentioned that it's now time to scale up the adoption of zero-emission non-road mobile machinery. Is the issue on the demand, or is the supply that it is not responding to the market needs? And what about charging needs depots? Are these an issue?
If I may, well, we will discuss this quite thoroughly through Irene's presentation, but I would like to report what our interviewees, manufacturers, told us. The issue is on the demand. The point is that they are not willing to invest more on expanding their products line because the demand appears quite unstable. And one example that one of the interviewees made was that if sometimes contractors or their customers that won some tenders or intend to win a tender, they would ask the producers if they could have access to sort of not hybrid machinery, because I don't want it to create confusion, but machinery that can be eventually retrofitted, because they're afraid that there won't be demand for zero-emission construction machinery in the future. And that's just too much of an investment, I think.
Indeed. I think on the answer to charging needs and this whether this is an issue, we are going to look into that in the report. But indeed, the charging infrastructure is a key aspect of planning for zero-emission construction sites in particular. And with that, I think we need to continue with the presentation, but we will try to answer more questions at the end if we have remaining time in the webinar. So thank you everyone so far. And I would like to give the floor to Ella.
Thank you, Irene. I'm going to share my presentation now. So I hope you all can see this. In a second. Yes. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on board. It's been really interesting this already, and I think the database is really helpful to be able to boost also the demand side and get procurers to demand zero-emission construction machinery. So I'm here to give you a brief overview over the project Power Up a Renewable Society, or short PURE, where we work in Oslo with our partners SINTEF, Hafslund, Rådgivning, and Bellona. Because reducing greenhouse gas emissions in a city, that is very much about electrification. It's replacing fossil engines with battery electric alternatives. Cars, heavy-duty vehicles, construction works, buses and ferries, ships, and also the machinery we need to serve our ports and terminals. So this is very much part of what we do in Oslo to reach our ambitious target of a 95% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And the transformation puts significant pressure on the energy system, and we need the energy system to be fit for a zero-emission society. So in PURE, we've tried to find smart ways to reduce energy demand, manage peak loads, and improve energy flexibility. And the project focuses especially on accelerating the shift to zero-emission construction. So I'd like to show this. It's an analysis from the International Council on Clean Transportation, ICCT, that show that off-road machines used in construction, industry, and agriculture are responsible for about 2 billion tons of CO2 emissions annually every year, globally every year. And that's more than shipping and twice as much as aviation. But also, unlike for airplanes and ships, zero-emission solutions for these machines are readily available. So what are we doing in PURE? Well, it's organized in 4 main work packages. And the first one is led by Oslo Climate Agency. And a key part of what we do in the Climate Agency is to deepen the cooperation among the key stakeholders in the energy transition. And here on the screen, you see one of the results from this cooperation, which is a digital energy planning tool for new building areas, which we have developed together and in collaboration with the local grid operator, Elvia, and also the local district heating company, Celsio. And by combining existing data in a map tool, it's possible to see both energy needs and also energy opportunities across Oslo. And we've tried this tool in an area called Rosenholm, south in Oslo. And it, for instance, showed that there was a data center nearby that made the area suitable for low temperature district heating system. And also that you could use the area to store geothermal energy. Another thing that we've done is that we've established a zero-emission construction forum, which is a regular meeting space where stakeholders across sectors, construction, grid, energy, come together and we learn from each other. And this has been important both to build trust, but also to understand each other's perspective better. And in April, we also held an energy conference in Oslo, which enabled us to share our work and also have a dialogue with the most important stakeholders in Oslo's energy transition. And we were happy to be able to present the Norwegian Minister of Energy on stage, and the governing mayor of Oslo, as well as city commissioners were also there, and national and local grid operators, industry experts, and researchers. So these meeting spaces have been essential for us to also develop a roadmap for Oslo's energy transition. Work package 2 is led by Hafslund Rådgivning or Hafslund Consultancy, and they have worked closely with the industry to develop practical guidelines for planning and operating zero-emission construction sites. And these guidelines, they include advice on choosing machinery based on seasonal energy needs, planning for charging logistics, and also to select the right equipment. And these guidelines, they've been shared internationally already. We have they are available now, both in English and also in Chinese. So if you use the QR code, you can access them in English. So Hafslund, they have also made an important cost analysis to which they delivered to the Norwegian Environmental Agency. And the findings are quite striking. For many projects, the additional costs of going zero emission is between 1% and 5% of the total budget, and in sometimes also under 1%. And the largest costs they stem from infrastructure and operations, not from the machinery itself. And also, as experience grows and battery capacity and technology improves, these costs are expected to decline even further. And this report is available only in Norwegian so far, but we plan to translate the short version in English as soon as possible. The third work package is led by SINTEF, and that is the research part of the PURE project. And SINTEF's goal is to extract lessons from Oslo's transition to zero-emission construction and also make these lessons useful for other cities. And SINTEF has been analyzing data from more than 300 project construction sites in Oslo, and they've identified 220 electric projects which they could draw lessons from. And this data makes it possible to understand barriers such as connection delays, equipment availability, but also the importance of early phase planning. And SINTEF have also completed a systematic review of papers on zero-emission construction, and they are now preparing a peer-reviewed publication summarizing the key findings. So this work will also be a valuable contribution to cities that aim to scale up zero-emission construction. So, to Bellona. Bellona, you play a vital role in bringing Oslo's experience to the European stage and also the experience from other cities. And you connect our work to EU-level policy processes, including Clean Industrial Deal. So this webinar and the report being launched today are both part of your and Bellona's effort to share concrete insights and support a broader market shift in this sector. And I'm especially looking forward to Irene's presentation next. I had an early look at the report, and I must say it's truly impressive work. The report brings together local experiences and policy recommendations in a way that I think will be very valuable to help accelerate the transition in zero-emission construction in Europe. So I'd like to say a little bit about another project, another Net Zero Cities project we launched, GRIP, Green, Responsible and Innovative Procurement, which we are in together with the cities of Aachen and Košice. Because we know we've learned a lot in Oslo, but we will not reach our goals unless other cities join us. We need to scale, coordinate and also share ambition. So GRIP, it supports cities in using procurement as a strategic climate tool. The project will design a toolkit, which will hopefully be useful for cities of all sizes and capacities. And just 2 weeks back, the project also launched a declaration where cities can commit to action or leadership on sustainable procurement. And if you represent a city here, I hope you will take a look and consider joining us. Because when cities move together, we send a stronger signal to the market, and we can lower costs and accelerate the green solutions that we need. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ella, for a great presentation and an overview of the project that Oslo has been involved in. Without further ado, we will have time if anyone has questions for Ella as well at the end. But then let me share the presentation from my side so we can take a look at the report that Ella introduced so well. So let's see. There we go. Okay, I hope you can see my screen in presentation mode now. Taking a while to load. I think that it's great. Well, thank you everyone for being so attentive and for engaging so much in the chat. I hope you also have questions for me after I'm done presenting this report, which is called From Oslo to the EU, the Journey Towards Clean Construction. This report was done in collaboration in the context of the Pure project that Ella just presented, in collaboration with the City of Oslo, Havsland, and SINTEF, and of course with a lot of my Bellona colleagues, and not least with the stakeholders that I've been engaging with in the context of zero-emission construction, especially in the Netherlands, in the Nordic countries, and of course in the Big Buyers community as well. Well, a little bit of an overview of what the reports will cover. I will not go into a lot of detail, just in the interest of time, but just to give you a bit the snapshots of what it says. And of course, we will share the links to the report afterwards. And first of all, we cover the why. Why do we need zero-emission construction sites in Europe? What is the need, not only from a climate perspective, but also from a local air quality perspective, from economic perspective, and we try to give a bit of an introduction to the topic. Then we look into the Oslo context. So what happened in Oslo, what were the targets, what were the plans? Ella already gave a little of an overview on that. I'm gonna tailor it a bit more in depth. And especially when we look at what were the journey, what were the initial successes and challenges that Oslo experienced, what can we learn from that? And we also did a bit of a snapshot in the report on the contractors' experiences. I am not going to dive deep into that in the presentation now, but just so you're aware that we covered that part as well. And then we look at what is the situation in Europe. Where do the European big buyers stand today in this context? What are the different pilots that are happening? Where are still the gaps that remain and that we need to bridge in order to make zero-emission construction sites a reality across the European Union? And we look at what are the success factors from Oslo that we can actually replicate in Europe, depending on the context of the city or region that we're looking at. And we end up with a summary of recommendations that, of course, need to be adapted to the context, but we are tailored in function of what are the different actors involved and what are the different activities that can be undertaken. And we try to summarize this with very short key lessons at the end. So let's get started on the emission sectors, the why, and what did Oslo do to tackle this. Ella provided an overview on the global emissions. I am zooming in into the European Union emissions from the non-road mobile machinery sector. And we see here that it amounts to around 108 megatons of CO2 every year. This is equal to about 30% of the EU emissions, which means 55 million cars running around the Earth every year. And this is equal to actually more than half of the all heavy-duty vehicle emissions. And if you see the graph, you can see that the green and the pink shades, which represent agriculture and forestry, and industry and construction, are the largest share, which is actually 2/3 of total emissions from Roman machinery. Though even this presentation, of course, focuses on construction in particular, but of course, I wanted to point out that agriculture, it's not machinery emissions are not negligible either. So Oslo's context, Ella provided very well an overview. I'm not going to get too much into detail, but I did want to share some key facts. So Oslo is the capital of Norway with about 700,000 inhabitants. This is a population density that you can see on the screen. The public investment per capita, it's more than 2,700 euros. And the GDP of the city is 7.735 billion euros. When we zoom into the public, the governance of the city, that's also something that we look very much into detail into the report. I am not getting into that there, but you can also read about the city budget, which is about 1.2 billion euros per year for construction. And you can also read about the procurement agencies that are involved in procurement processes in the city in the report. But as Ella mentioned, Oslo was actually the first city globally to mandate zero-emission public construction works. This is effective as of January 1st, 2025. And for public, for private construction works, this will be effective as of 2030. Oslo started with a clear roadmap back in 2015 after the Paris Agreement. And you will see an overview of what was the journey in the next slide. Here we see that the journey, we see that it's as a very inspiring journey. It committed in 2015 to 95% emission reductions by 2030, and then there were no zero-emission construction sites in the city. Now all public works are zero-emission. How did this happen? Well, we looked at a lot of information. We exchanged a lot with the city of Oslo and with their partners, and we distilled the journey into 6 steps. Here you see the first step was to create a clear roadmap. They had the emission construction, like the emission reduction goal. There's a little typo here, it should be 2030, not 2020. But there are also, they identified 16, I believe, priority sectors in which construction was one of them. And once they have identified this, Oslo set out a procurement policy that includes not on other criteria beyond price. The next step was to require a shift into the construction fuel for the machineries. So first of all, the Oslo's municipal developer partnered with Bellona to set a new procurement standard that required fossil-free construction sites. So contractors were asked to switch from diesel to biodiesel, which was a relatively simple but effective change that helped kickstart the market transformation, and also started developing pilot projects from 2016 and 2018. Once they had already seen that this switch was much swifter than they expected, they decided to make fossil-free the minimum for construction projects. So basically, fossil-free construction became the baseline, and these helped standardize these environmentally friendly practices across the project, while still making sure to communicate to contractors that this shift to fossil-free was not the end goal. The end goal was to get to zero emission, but this was a step in the process that enabled the transition to test also the different procurement practices and what could be done. Then once fossil-free had been on the minimum, we said, okay, they said, what can be electric shall be run electric. So whenever available, the tenders started requiring electric machinery. There was a strong demand signal that influenced really the industry to shift. It was very clear that there would be no backtracking, that this was the direction that the city was going towards. And that way also started nudging the markets towards zero-emission solutions. This of course didn't happen only by the city of Oslo telling the contractors what to do, but this happened through a lot of market dialogue. This started in 2017, 2018 to start building the readiness, and this culminated into the Ola's fifth gate, which was the world's first zero-emission construction site project. It was the pilot that the city of Oslo had. We dived deep a little bit into the report also in this project. And the particularity of this pilot is that the city covered energy and electricity costs to support the suppliers into this first of a kind project. Then in October 2019, the Oslo municipality introduced the standard climate and environmental requirements for public procurement in construction sites. Again, in the report, we have a very big breakdown of what these requirements entail, but they included fossil-free or zero-emission machinery, reporting of emissions, and there would be consequences if there would be no compliance after the tender had been awarded. So this is a bit of a big summary of the journey, of the 5-year journey of Oslo. And here I wanted to maybe mention that this was indeed very much a strategy. Oslo used public procurement as a strategic tool, and not only that, but it emphasized a lot on environmental award criteria. You can see here in this graph that I've borrowed from the city of Oslo that they award 30% on price and the tender, 40% on quality, and 30% of environment. And now this can also be broken down into different categories, of which 7% was depending on the type of machinery. So this was a huge signal, and the market really took it as such. Ella can speak about more to this later if there are more questions, but indeed this was the situation, and it was a gradual tightening, as I mentioned, from fossil-free to zero-emission, and this was done in collaboration and in discussion with the markets to get them ready. And this ends up in what we have now. Oslo has all public works are zero-emission construction, and this came with a lot of learnings. And what were those learnings? Well, we collected them into 5 main categories. So the first of all was the emission reductions and what are the different co-benefits that they happened. So citizens were immediately accepting of these zero-emission construction sites. It's actually quite impressive to see them in action because, of course, there are some aspects of the construction work that you need that you cannot avoid the noise of if you're drilling rock, for example. But if you the machine already, the lack of vibrations from the machinery, the lack of noise from the engine is already very, very impressive to witness. And not only that, but also the air quality of the city improved drastically. Another key aspect was that early and in-depth planning are crucial. It is very important to dedicate enough time and resources to really properly assess the system, where are the needs in terms of energy supply, in terms of collaboration with the contractors, also in terms of tender, how can we actually make a tender that makes sense. And Oslo has a specific context, but in the EU we have the procurement directives. But this was also a lesson that Oslo really took from the experience. Then another one that I've mentioned already through the market dialogue, stakeholder involvement was crucial. From procurement officials, contractors, suppliers, dealers, grid operators, public developers, even civil society organizations such as Bellona, really made this journey possible, engaging with them, discussing the possible solutions, an act of curiosity. And I think this was also very crucial for the transition to happen. We also saw that the regulatory and financial mechanisms were key. So not only having public procurement as a strategic tool, including green criteria, environmental criteria, but also clear and ambitious targets, and including drawing from a strong legal national framework. And last but not least is the energy infrastructure deployment and grid load management. This is very important, in particular, as we're talking about different supplies of energy. What are the energy sources that are available? Do we have sufficient access to energy, to electricity? Do we have, if we are using hydrogen-powered machines, is there hydrogen supply ready? How is the energy planning? Are we integrated this into the project? How would the power peaks in the grid affect the grid management, the grid load management? Will there be enough public charging infrastructure? How much notice do we need to give the energy, the agency or their operator the city operator in charge of deploying this charging infrastructure before the project starts? How do we coordinate the grid capacity, the energy data? So these are all very impressive lessons that Oslo did, not without its headaches, of course, but as Ella presented, Havsland has now distilled this into something way more actionable for contractors in different types of projects. And it's really making things clearer and easier as to when should the energy operator be involved and how, which I think is a very impressive piece of work. So these are, in a nutshell, the key lessons from Oslo. And now we're going to look at the European context and see how these lessons can be applied to Europe. So first of all, we need to see, where do the European public buyers stand today? So we see a lot of differences, of course, in the different regions and cities in Europe. We see that there are different governance structures. Some countries have more centralized systems, like France or Italy, which often set procurement policy at national level. And Norway or the Netherlands maybe have more greater autonomy in setting environmental standards in tenders. But of course, we also have the common framework of the European Public Procurement Directive. There's also a difference in the procurement maturity. What is the different innovation culture? What are the market readiness? Of course, what are the different supply chains, the availability of machinery, as people pointed out earlier and before, is different depending on the country sometimes, and this needs to be noted. What is the skill of the contractors? What's the grid capacity in the region? Different legal and regulatory environments. But despite this difference in governance structures, there are also shared opportunities. And as I mentioned, the EU has the directives. There's guidance, abundant guidance from DG GROW on how to procure with innovation procurement, strategic procurement, green procurement. There's also the EU climate goals, which do set us a framework in which to operate. There is also at the moment renewed political attention to the role of lead markets to help decarbonize and retain competitiveness into the European industrial sectors, including methodologies like life cycle costing that provide a common legal and policy backbone. And in particular, if we zoom in into the European context, and more like into the cities level, actually, we see that the interest in zero-emission construction site is growing. There are many early adopters in many regions. We see that there are several Nordic capitals, Dutch cities that have included zero-emission construction site targets in different ways. We also have individual cities like Barcelona or Paris that have started their own pilot projects. And at EU level, there's several initiatives and networks, such as the big buyers working together, Net Zero Cities, C40, and more, that are fostering collaboration, knowledge exchange into how to procure sustainably. And there are significant disparities, yeah, as I mentioned, but there's also a lot of common opportunities. And if we look at what we're learning from Oslo and how we can replicate these factors, success factors, enablers in Europe, we see that, first of all, having a strong political mandate and clear targets is very key. At the moment, there are plenty of opportunities at the European level, as I've mentioned. There are also especially, I think maybe I would like to zoom in into a specific piece of legislation, which is the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which mandates EU member states to provide whole life carbon reduction roadmaps, which includes also limit values for global warming potentials for new buildings. And it will set targets from 2030 with a downward trend. This means that not only the emissions from operations of the buildings, but also from the production of the materials involved, and of course from the construction phase, will also be taken into account. So switching towards zero-emission construction sites already helps us lower the whole life carbon of buildings, according to this directive as well. There's also existing initiatives in many cities, like low emission zones. This already sets the ground for including zero-emission construction sites in those low emission zones to start with, which can later be expanded. But they do set a great example, and a lot of cities are already building their zero-emission construction targets on top of this low zero-emission zone. If we also look at how to use strategic public procurement as a market driver, we see that we have the European Public Procurement Directive, which provides already a solid foundation for integrating environmental criteria into public tenders. This directive already allows public authorities to award contracts not solely based on the lowest cost, but on what it's called the most economically advantageous tender, the MIT criteria, which includes different evaluation criteria. But despite this being allowed, it is not mandatory, and at the moment only 55% of all public tenders in the EU, actually 55% of all public tenders in the EU procure based only on price, which is a missed opportunity, especially when we were aiming to kickstart this transition. We also see, as we mentioned, that market dialogue is crucial. I think it was pointed out by some of the attendees to the webinar as well before, because this is maybe a question on the one side on the demand, but on the other side on the supply as well, maybe to a different extent. And it does help public buyers assess technological readiness. It prepares for the transition, for the deployment of the necessary infrastructure. It does help signal demand to suppliers, allow them time to prepare and innovate in response. It promotes trust, collaboration, and I think it's a very crucial aspect of this transition, as Oslo's example shows. There is also very key to include the technical planning and energy coordination. I'm not going to insist much into this, but energy planning must be done in parallel with the procurement planning to ensure that the capacity of the grid is in place, charging infrastructure is in place. We also see that there is a need for including early phase greenhouse gas calculation, mandatory emission reporting, making sure that we have enough data to build upon, especially as we start from pilots to more streamlined projects. We also see, as I mentioned, pilot projects very crucial. It allows to test different requirements into a control environment, allows also a bit more flexibility into the contract, allows also some it's more of like a testing ground. And this is very important, especially to gain confidence into how to do this at a larger scale. As I mentioned as well, the peer learning, access to practical tool, these city networks that play a critical role in facilitating this exchange. There's a lot of resources out there. The Commission has done also a good job into collecting a lot of best practices, and they are, and I think, underutilized resources. And then we see that there is a need, of course, to support the transition as the adoption becomes more widespread, tailored to the local context, and ensuring that this doesn't stay in a pilot project, but actually becomes the norm. And just a little bit of a quick case study that we have in the report, because I think it's very interesting to see that we have this. We all have this idea that electric machinery is more expensive than the standard machinery, and this might be the case in terms of price, but it's true that when we look at the total cost of ownership, that is not always the case. It is sometimes, like in the case of this 20-ton electric 20-ton loader from XMCG, we see the cost, the total cost of ownership comparison between the electric and diesel models, and despite a higher upfront cost, it proves that the electric wheel loader offers a lower total cost of ownership, which of course this also comes with operational environmental benefits for both the operator and the citizens. And it is also important to note that this depends on the energy prices, but if we had the right signals in place in terms of electricity, low electricity prices and high diesel prices, this pays off very quickly. And last but not least, I compiled in here the key recommendations from the Eurocities, summarized in 8, but if in the reports you can see which of the stakeholders involved in the process it applies to, and what different actions that can be taken for these recommendations to be put in place. First of all, and I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but it is important to set clear climate, air quality, zero-emission construction targets. It is also very important to use procurement strategically, including environmental criteria. That it should also be mandatory, so that we actually are able to pull enough aggregated demand to make this transition happen. We also should launch pilot projects. Don't be afraid to test them, and enable the early market dialogue. Coordinate energy planning, build procurement capacity, provide transitional financial support, standardize data collection and metrics, and leverage networks and peer learning. So we see that thanks to this, the scale-up of zero-emission construction sites is possible. It just needs the right support in place. Our 4 key takeaways is that these are essential to have a long-term vision, align departments in the procurement sphere, and mobilize industrial change, collaboration and open consultations with the market, including data-driven planning and using procurement as a lever. So, and that's the conclusion of the report. I am looking forward to hearing your questions. But before we get to that, I wanted to give you an overview of what's coming up next for Bellona in this field. So also in the context of Pure, we're going to launch a European policy recommendation report, doing an analysis of whether existing policies that are related to the topic of zero-emission construction sites, and providing recommendations for the European Union to be an enabler of the transition across Europe. Also, we're going to be looking at how does public procurement play a role in construction, not only in zero-emission construction sites, but also in materials procurement, and understanding how it can be a tool for the transition to reach zero-emission construction, not sites only, but construction in general. In October, we are also hosting the Bellona Annual Climate Action Conference. We will have a lead markets panel there, and we hope to also bridge this gap as well, putting the link between public procurement, zero-emission construction sites, zero-emission or low-carbon products and machinery. And last but not least, as Linda mentioned in her presentation, we did in the past, my colleagues did 2 reports on the status of the market availability, and now thanks to Linda's research and my research on the database and the new machinery that we know that is available, we would like to do a status report update, the 3rd of its kind. So also stay tuned for that. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions. let's see. I think I answered Tobias' question through my presentation, but it's not please to follow up. I see Alex Lemmers asks, what about using alternative fuels? For example, HVO reducing CO2 equivalent up to 90%, where electrical machineries or electrical infrastructure are not available at the moment. I would say that's definitely possibilities, like what Oslo did at the beginning, transitioning through biodiesel. So as a transitional measure, that's absolutely a great starting point, as long as we have, of course, a roadmap that leads us to zero emission eventually. I think we don't have any more questions for now, but of course, yes, Tobias asks if we have been able to estimate the actual demand in terms of euros of public works. That will be asking from some kind of zero emission construction across countries. No, not yet, but this is something that we hope to cover during the market's availability status update report. Because we do think that there's a lot of value in showing also that how much is in the volume, in terms of volume, how much is happening as well. That's a very good point. Thank you. Of course, also feel free to repost any questions that you've had for Linda or myself or any of the presenters that I might have missed before.
There should be a raised hand. Let me check. From Matti, just a second. Matti Pettersson, I will. Matthias Pettersson, you can speak now.
Yes, I think Matthias, you have your hands up.
Yeah.
I think you can unmute yourself if you wanna ask your question. Okay. Otherwise, I see that we have two new questions. One from Merit. In our dialogue with suppliers, what are they saying about how to meet the surge of Asian producers and how will they step up to the challenge? Well, that is a good question. I think they were concerned, of course, and I think my colleague Mark will speak a little bit to it in his final remarks, because we definitely want to avoid what happened with electric vehicle production in Europe. So they are very much, and I think as that we are now in this kind of context where we hear a lot about deregulation, I think producers of zero-emission machinery are calling for more regulation that actually enables them to fully transition with a more secure and with a more like a stronger demand signal, in the sense of by having this predictability that regulatory certainty that the zero-emission construction sites will be promoted through these different measures. They are really actually looking forward to that, and that's something that I don't hear from many other industrial sectors, I have to say, which is, I think, speaks a lot as to how much importance policy has in this sector. As to how will they step up to the challenge, I haven't heard to that. I think some of them already are. But perhaps that's something that we can try to include in the Bellona annual conference in the form of the panel discussion. I see that if they ask if the presentations will be available to share, let me assure you that yes, we have compiled the presentations and our speakers have agreed that it will be no problem to share the presentations, if I'm not mistaken. Especially with the guidelines, I know that they're everyone is excited to get their hands on those, and the report, of course. I think I'm missing a little bit through the chat. So if you can post your questions in the question and answer function of Zoom, that'd be a bit easier, but I will try to scroll up and find another question that I saw before. I see. What about life cycle total greenhouse gas emissions, including emissions from battery production, etc.? Really use search, yeah. Okay, so this question basically asks if we are considering total life cycle emissions, because there are some concerns that sometimes going fully electric, depending on the boundary conditions, results in higher emissions. This can be the case if the electricity production is very high in terms of it's very pollutant intensive, emission intensive. When the energy production is not emission intensive, it's very rare that this happens, including battery production. I think I have a good source in the report on this topic, but if I don't, I'll try to find it and share it with the follow-up as well. I think so. Daniel Marsh asks if he assumes that we would normally classify a construction site as zero emission if it's still using HVO fuels, even in hard to decarbonize areas. Well, actually, no. So normally zero emission is only when there are no on-site emissions. So that unfortunately does not qualify for HVO. I think that's a fossil-free construction site. And that's also how it's defined for the city of Oslo, but also how it needs to be understood, because of course HVO does produce emissions from combustion, even though of course it's not equivalent to fossil, completely fossil gas, but indeed it does. It still produces emissions. So. And I think that's it for what I can see in the chat. But if there are any more questions, we do have a couple more minutes before I give the floor to my colleague Mark. Well, we're also, of course, always available via email. So please do feel free to reach out to us. This, I should have said before, but we have recorded these presentations, and it will be made available also in our channels, so that you can also revisit it if you need. We'll share the materials, and yes, please do keep in touch, especially with constructive criticism, which is how we grow. So without further ado, sorry, one last question from Daniel Marsh, sorry. I see that through our industry engagement, have we found that whether there are any incentives to adopt zero-emission machines that are more popular? In the UK, cost and availability are often the main barriers. I think we've seen a lot of different methods, but that, I wouldn't say more or less popular. I think a lot of them are adapted to the local context. I think the Dutch example, which we also showcase in our report, is also is a good example as well. They will also see that some cities have certain different contexts than others, even within the same national framework. So I actually would recommend have a look to the reports and the references that we share, and perhaps you will find a couple of different examples, such as not only the Oslo experience, but also the Dutch experience as well. And with that, I'll give the floor to my colleague, Mark.
Thank you, Irene. Might have to turn off your sound. Thank you, Irene, for handing over. Thanks for organizing an extremely comprehensive workshop on zero-emission construction sites. I'm very happy to provide the closing remarks on a topic that I used to work on when I first joined Bellona in 2018. having contributed to the first zero-emission construction sites report from 2018 and on the second update in 2019, and having helped also to set up the database, which when we started in 2019 was very much of our own initiative, trying to map out where construction machinery was available. We kept getting questions from city authorities asking us where they could find any of these machines. We were curious for ourselves, so we put these all together. And a few years later, we're finally able to provide a substantive update. Grateful for the work that we've been able to produce alongside Eurocities. Thank you very much for the great presentations that we had. Danko on the big buyers working together, which is a commission-funded initiative to bring together big public procurers. If you are one of those, then please do join. Please do contribute to that work. Please get involved in not just the zero-emission construction sites work, but the other working groups as well. Linda with an excellent presentation on our new database, which we're very excited to share. We've seen a lot of improvements in the availability of machinery, as you've seen. Ella on the Pure project, showcasing the incredible work that's been happening in Oslo to shape the future of the zero-emission construction sites market. And finally, Irene with some very insightful policy recommendations on how we can change the construction sector. Clearly, we've seen that this topic has evolved a lot in the past few years. There is a clear rationale to work on electrifying construction machinery. As Linda explained, there's less noise, there's less air pollution, there's less CO2. It's very clear that the climate crisis is real. All sectors have to contribute, and machinery is a significant contributor. Can be compared to the emissions of some European member state countries. Something which is a bit disappointing is having seen, I guess, not as much progress as we have liked to have seen in this sector. A story which hopefully we will not have to copy from the EV story that's been happening in Europe so far, which has been quite a disappointment. To see the transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles become more challenging than it should have been, primarily out of resistance from car manufacturers resisting change. When we first started working on electric machinery, we wanted to prove that electric vehicles are a no-brainer. I think we more or less managed to achieve that to an extent in a way that EVs proved themselves that they're no-brainers. I think it turns out we're also showing that zero-emission machinery is itself also a no-brainer. That said, we have a key opportunity to make sure that Europe doesn't fall behind on the transition towards electric construction machinery, the way that it seems to be falling behind on the electric vehicle story. We have a lot of European manufacturers of construction machinery. We need to make sure that they are the ones leading us into the transition, and that we can deliver on this famous buzzword of European competitiveness. The car industry pushed for delays, and now it came back to bite them. Let's hope that we can work with machinery producers to prevent that from happening. We've also seen that cities can play a key role in using the public money that they have available to fund projects. The use of public procurement as a tool is really important, is one of our key focus areas here at Bellona. Zero-emission construction sites is one of those applications, the one that we've chosen to focus on as a case study to show that it can be done, to show that we can electrify machinery, to show that we can use this money put that money to good use. It's one of many possible applications. So we need to also explore how this can happen with other sectors. We need more than cities. We also need to make sure that beyond getting the local level to create a market for clean machinery, that this was also something that can be extended to the European level. And for that, we're grateful to Oslo's work in being able to show that this can be done in one city, to show that it can be done in another city and another, and hopefully can then be replicated at the national level and eventually European level, and make sure that we turn the European Union into a lead market for green products such as green construction machinery. And some closing point that in the words of Chris Martin from Coldplay, nobody said it was easy. But anyway, we need to get this done. We need to solve the climate crisis, and we need help from all of you guys. So thank you very much, Irene, for putting together this wonderful workshop. Thank you, Linda, for the database. Thanks, Danko, for your presentation, Ela, and thank you all for attending, and see you again soon.